Now, again, what to look for when you're looking at these images, when you're studying them. The clothes, who's wearing them, what and when, the styles, the potential colors, and that's something that we want to talk about, the patterns and accessories. The location of the image, is it in an outdoor, is it actually out in the outdoors somewhere in a field, for military images, or looking at something that's taken near a military camp, or is it done in a studio? The photographer's props, and sometimes they would use props in photographs. And they change by the location, look at the photographer's back mark, because a lot of these would actually be stamped, particularly the cabinet cards and the CDVs on the back with the stamp saying who the manufacturer was, what they say about the sitter, and especially when it comes to mourning practices. And if you can see the markings, who's the photographer, where are they working, are they even identifiable? And a lot of these, like this one here, there's no marks on it. Can't tell who did that. Almost all of the ferrotype images don't have any identification on them. Sometimes there'll be a mark on the inside. If there's a paper face or behind the image, they'll say what the manufacturer is, where the manufacturer is. At least the manufacturer of the case. It doesn't always say who the photographer is. So sometimes it's hard to tell exactly who's doing what there. And then how does the image compare to others even to a respective time period? And the other thing is, don't discredit your own observation. Sometimes you'll look at these images, you'll see something, go, that's just not right. But you're looking at it going, but I know, either because of what type of photograph it is, I mean, you're looking at an ambrotype, and you're seeing something that you don't think is supposed to be around the 1870s. But again, you say, well, it's an image on glass, they would have been using those in the 1870s. You kind of got to rethink, well, maybe they did actually do, or wear whatever this person has, for an earlier period than most people think. We'll move on. Now, this is what we're talking about, looking at beyond the obvious. And this image over here is actually in our personal collection. Actually, if I'm really savvy, this thing is on the laser pointer, right? This guy over here on the right. Now, what's wild about him, he doesn't really show up here. We did an enlargement down in the bottom. He's actually wearing a fully placketed shirt that goes down to his waist. And that's one of those things when we saw that, it was actually Jen that caught it. She's looking at it through a magnifying glass and going, what the heck is that? Because just about everything that talks about men's clothing in the 19th century says, and this is what you also see an awful lot, I can probably find an example to show you here. Yeah. This is a men's shirt. This is a night shirt.
Well, it works the same way.
Works the same way. But you see that there's a placket that goes about halfway down the front. The placket where the two parts of the shirt come together. And then from that on down, it's just one piece of fabric. And that's the way men's shirts work. This is a night shirt, just kind of a longer version of a man's shirt.
But not by much.
But not by much. And but that's kind of one of those things. Everybody says, well, you're going to wear a shirt, and it has to be a pullover shirt that's got a placket that only goes halfway down. Well, this wacky guy here, and he's an ambrotype. He's an image on glass, and you look at his hairstyle, the way it's long and slicked back like that. That's very typical of the 1850s. He's wearing a big cravat. Big cravats were very popular in the 1850s. You can't really see he's wearing a jacket there, or a coat, and he's wearing it open. It looks like it's actually a tailcoat, I think. He's wearing it open. And most times men would wear a vest when they have their coats open because, having too much of your shirt front showing is just considered to be passé. But he's got his shirt front right out there and wide open, and lo and behold, he's got a pocket that goes all the way down to his waist, and down here at the bottom, the shirt's even open a little bit. So it's kind of those things. What the heck is this guy doing wearing this shirt? He's got a fully open front shirt, and it's 1850 something. Who knows? Now the guy on the right is actually a CDV in our collection, and he's wearing what appears to be a military uniform. And at first glance, you go, oh, it's a Civil War uniform. And one of the other things is, looking at this, because again, Confederate things are always so valuable. You always want to stumble across a Confederate image. And so again, it's always wearing gray, but you don't know that. And that's one of the weird things about the collodion process, is the way it captures color. It's not just strictly black and white. The collodion process captures the red end of the spectrum. So when you see something that's dark, it tends to be something that has a lot of red in it. So like your red shirt or your red coat back there, those would go black. Blues tend to go white, or very light colors. So like my shirt would be almost invisible on a collodion. The background here would be very light. So that's the way the collodion process works. And colors that are in between that are mixtures, it depends on what's mixed in them. If it's a color that's got more red in it, like yellows are really iffy. If it's a yellow that has a lot of red in it, it'll go dark. If it's a yellow that doesn't have a lot of red, it'll be lighter. So when you look at something like this and say, oh yeah, it's a gray coat he's wearing. Well, you don't know that. It could be light blue. It could even be dark blue. It could be some shade of green. So we don't really know what color he's wearing. We can pretty much say with confidence it isn't a red. and his hat as well. Now the weird thing about it is, and we kind of get a little zoom in there, but on his lapels, or on his collar, his stand-up collar on his coat, he's got little crossed keys. And that's not what you think it would be in the United States military, and of course on the image it's like CDD, but there's no back marks or any identifying features on it. So what he is, he's probably European. I don't know if he's a doorman of a hotel or a Burgermeister at some walled German town, and he's got the key to the city, or what exactly his deal is. But he's definitely, 1860s, 1870s, he dates right in there. One of the things interesting is his sack coat is a very poor fit. He's kind of a big guy, but his coat is just kind of tube. It's not very well tailored at all. So he's probably not too high up on the socioeconomic ladder, let's say. We'll keep moving on here. Oh, this is our little friend here that we passed around earlier. This morning we were getting ready for this talk, because you never know, these images are cased. It's actually wrapped in the metal case, and then it's set inside the larger Union case. And you can pop these images out. And I was asking my wife, she goes, "Oh, I really like this guy, he's so hot." And I said, "Well, have you ever taken your little man out of his case there?" And she said, "No," so we did. And we took him out of the case, and this little piece of paper popped out, folds up in there. And what this piece of paper is, it's a mourning poem. And we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, because later in the season we're going to lecture all about Victorian mourning customs. But that was one of the things that was very important to Victorians, was remembering their deceased relatives and friends. And there's actually a little handwritten note on the back side of the case, underneath the picture, where it gives this gentleman's name, and then it has a little thing where it says, "My beloved husband." So obviously this picture was kept by the wife of this gentleman. And it's an amber type. It's, looks like it dates from the 1850s, given his hairstyle and clothing style and everything. And this piece of paper, it's got this little poem. You can see that there if you want it. It starts, "Beloved one, I would not wish to move thee back to earth, for thorns and numbered and the cold, spring daily into birth." It's very Victorian. But then on the back side, because this little piece of paper is obviously cut out of the newspaper. This woman obviously saw the poem, liked it, cut it out, and put it in the case. But on the back side, there's this little one column of the newspaper, and it's missing some words because it's been cut out. But it says something about the federal government, the Congress, and it says the leaders of the existing insurrection, which dates it right to the 1860s during the Civil War. So with this little thing here, I'm able to put this date right on it. So this picture was probably taken in the late 1850s, I guess. And then the gentleman died during the 1860s. Now what we're going to do is research him and see if we can figure out who he is, because his name is in there, and see if we can figure out if he served in the Civil War and if he was killed in some Civil War battle or died of disease or whatever. And then his wife obviously went into mourning. But that's another one of these little surprises that can pop out when you study these images.
What's his name?
There's a couple of names in there. There's a Mrs. and Mrs. Herod that's written in there. And then there's some other line, I can't quite make it out, and this is my beloved husband. So it's probably a Mr. Herod, from what we can figure out. So, but it's, it's one of those little things. That's one of the things that's just like, Mr. Gage earlier, when you're studying these things, if that we're able to sometimes put names to the faces and, kind of unravel their stories. And again, having that little bit of newspaper back there, and it's really interesting. Sometimes you can find, sometimes there'll be locks of hair behind images, because that was a big thing of Victorian mourning, was keep a piece of the departed's hair. So sometimes you'll find hair behind images of people that have just been deceased. And again, sometimes you'll find, this is the first one for us, to find a little piece of newspaper like this.
The hair wasn't always for mourning.
And the hair was not always for mourning.
Souvenir.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes it was just a souvenir. Yeah. That is very true. And that's kind of one of those other things too. You look at these things and does this mean what I think it means? And that's what we were having a discussion about earlier. In photographs, you'll often see a picture of a chair, an empty chair next to one. And sometimes it can mean that it's mourning, that the husband should be seated in that chair, and that she's mourning him. But does it always? And what does it mean when a man's standing behind an empty chair? So it's one of those things that doesn't always mean what you think it means.